So let's see what Harry Kane does as the ball goes to the right-sided centre-back. So he stops him playing forward. He almost runs straight at him and prepared for him to play right or left because he knows he's got support. Again, this is being forced wide, and Reece James makes up a massive amount of ground and is very aggressive with his challenge and creates a crossing situation. So again, we're looking at those front players, but what are the ones doing behind? So we often follow the ball and the players that are on and around the ball. But look at the people like Reece James and the players in midfield that are supporting the play. And look how we're prepared to go man for man at the back to actually try and get that high reward. Is there anything, guys, you'd like to add into that?
Yeah, I think, Chris, you made a good point about a job and a half. I think when you look at the England players set up, they're not all locked on really tight. They're almost they're covering some and cutting off some passing lanes as they go. So when one presses, they're ready to go and press, but they're also cutting off passes into certain areas. And if you look, what they do is they force wide as they go now. But you look at the body position of that presser, they're forcing wide and they go and keep wide. So they really lock the opposition in and don't let them out. And as you say, at the back, away from the ball, which is really important when you're working on pressing. If you pause that there, England have got prepared to go man for man on the back. So it's allowed them to commit numbers onto the press. So there's no spare men for them. Is it Albania, sorry, did you say?
Yes, Albania, yeah.
Work the ball out. But the risk of that is England are man for man at the back and they're comfortable because of the players' capabilities. They're moving in there and they're locking them in. So they've shown wide. The players have kept wide, force-wise kept wide, and they've actually won the ball and got attack off it.
My eyes are focusing on the support behind the ball. So the timing of Phillips to go and jump onto the midfield player literally is in sync with Harry Kane. And if that timing's out, potentially that defender can play into that midfield player, and then Phillips is potentially too late to be able to stop it from getting in there, and they can play around it. So for me, like you spoke about, the supporting positions and the timing is essential.
Good.
And I think everyone's pretty much on there's a front foot mentality. The second the ball goes into somebody's area, they're already on their way.
You can clearly see United's 4 back players and the 2 holding midfield players. And then they have 3 in front, Cavani up front, Mason Greenwood out here on the right. But see what happens when you don't quite get it right. So Cavani's obviously trying to push him into that area, but they've found a way out to find their spare player. Again, dragging United from side to side. And then they get a bit disjointed in midfield and lose. And this is played in here to almost a 3v1 situation. Again, it becomes a mini game inside a game. And then from here, they break very well. Very positive, and almost score.
The spaces between the United players are massive. So when if you're going to go and press, you're trying to condense space or try and set traps to force them in certain areas. But I think here they're so far apart from each other. Even if you look at the back line, and the spaces between the midfield players are massive. They're not really on the same lines. They're kind of all over the place. If you're thinking about a back 4, they're in line. But then everybody else are not really in any sort of lines to kind of set up any type of block. So therefore, for me, they just get played easier because they just get outnumbered. They're so far spread as a team that I think they just made it easier for Villa.
When you look at that picture there, you think Man United are almost going to pin them in. And when you look at the England clip and you looked behind the ball, the England back 3, they were almost man for man. So it allowed players to push in. As that rolls, if you let it play, Chris, if you let it play, if you pause that picture there, Man United have got a 4v2 in the back line for me there. So what that's allowed is, so once they've gone pressing and they've gone over that initial press, in behind that, that ball into Aston Villa midfield player, for me, the Man United midfield player potentially could have been shoulder, like channel side, so he's in a position to maybe intercept that what I'd call that when it goes over the press, a bit of a 50-50. Once that midfielder's taken it in, and Man United have allowed themselves to get caught with a 4v2 at the back, there's a big overload somewhere, and that's in the midfield for Aston Villa. So Man United think they're protecting the space in the back line. What's allowed is a massive overload for Aston Villa in the middle of the pitch.
Yeah.
So the back line drops off, creates a big gap between the midfield player and the back four. And Aston Villa, for me, pick up good possession and get a counter attack on and work the ball right up the pitch.
So again, here there's a clear understanding as to where obviously that's Ellen White, as to where she wants the potential ball to go. Now that just might be strategically, it might be the right-sided centre back, might be the weaker out of the two. And again, I don't know if that's factual, but sometimes we set these traps up for those reasons. But you can clearly see there's an arc to the run to potentially stop the ball from going to the four who's passing it back now and forcing it one way. Then you've got the supporting player. You've got the supporting player as well, making sure it can't go there. And then just as we see the ball go across here now, we're looking at we'll just wait for the clip to run. So we're looking at Beth England being the second engager, nice and tight. We're looking at numbers game again. You know, there's a 4v4 in that box, so it's quite condensed. And then we're looking at the anticipation from Kira Walsh coming from behind to look to be that person who's actually going to win the ball. So we spoke about the front three potentially not being the ones, and it might be the midfield supporting players behind it being able to pick up the ball to recover it. And then obviously it ends up with a goal with Beth Mead at the far post as they've managed to stay high and win the ball.
We talk about small-sided games. This is a great example of why you might want to play some small-sided games, because the little 4v4, you break out and you're creating a goal. So that risk and reward that we talked about as well, linking it back to that and player capabilities. Yeah. And I agree, it looks like a deliberate plan to let the right-sided centre-back have the ball, because the girls on the left-hand side were really switched onto it quickly.
If you just let that run, and we let it run, and we see Kira Walsh, if we pause it there, if she goes too tight too early on that midfield player, I think the Northern Ireland defender on the ball goes over the press. So her timing, and for me, that's a little bit of deception. She's given enough space, whereas the opposition think they can play the ball in. Then her timing to go in there and nick it and intercept the ball is key. So it's, even though you're pressing, there's a definite thought behind it around the time and the deception. Then her technique when she wins it, she doesn't just win it and tackle and give it away, or she actually steps in, regains possession, and they go away and they score from it. It's there. Her timing, a little nudge pass. So it's then she's kind of then after she's done that action, the after for me, she's actually locking down the pitch again, securing the pitch. So I think what Kira Walsh does in there is absolutely massive.
I think it's quite good that we've done it from a corner. Actually, it's like probably like a third phase. But initially, if you look at the way they've gone out, straight away they've gone out when there's a 2v1. So potentially the mindset for Aston Villa is they don't really mind the ball going into the box because they're allowing a 2v1 to happen. Ball gets played out, they clear their lines. And now if you look at this, if you look at the numbers now on the ball is a 2v1. Yes, the United player is making a 2v2 away from the ball, which is Fred. But then you've got John McGinn in that sort of in that space in between. So for me, certainly if I'm Aston Villa's manager, I'm thinking here, stop the cross. The ball's not coming into the box. So again, the first engager for me is in a decent position, but the second player supporting behind, which I believe is Danny Ings, I think is too near Ollie Watkins. I think his position needs to be off him slightly, or he could be deeper, potentially if he beats Ollie Watkins. But either way, there's a 2v1 here. They're not crossing the ball. So where are you showing him? Are you showing him down the line? Are you allowing him to turn back? That's obviously got to be a collective within the team. So if I let it run on, there's your 2v1 highlighted. There's your player in the hole that I spoke about, and there's Fred highlighted. And as it goes on here, so again here, now, if in my opinion here, if Danny Ings is slightly away from Ollie Watkins, is not as close to him, he can get closer to Fred. Fred happens to be, I believe he's left-footed, so he's come back onto his left foot and he's able to put a cross in. And obviously with John McGinn's position, with Danny Ings' position being too far away, he actually can't stop the cross. And when you think about John McGinn's position in there, there's actually nothing, he's actually not having an effect on the play. So if you talk about a numbers game in the box there, Villa have actually got more players than United in the box to defend the cross. But in my opinion, stopping the cross in the first point is the biggest thing. So I'll let it run on. Ball goes in, middle of the goal, free header, goal scored against you.
I think there's a couple of things there that sort of strike me. A, that they brought everybody back, which seems to be a trend. So you're going to invite second and third wave attacks. I think they are happy. They feel as though they're going to win the headers, so they've only sent one out. And then the other thing is this sort of too many cooks spoil the broth. I think that there's that many players, nobody's taking real responsibility.
Yeah.
And you could argue they could have got up another 5 yards to the edge of the box if they were really on their mettle. So I think there's some real key points there. They could have done a lot better. But on the theme of pressing out wide, you've picked up on some great points there. Ben?
Yeah, I think you've covered it really well. I think they've allowed that off the short corner again. I'm not sure you'd want someone kind of getting to the byline like that and crossing it. I think it's very dangerous. But once that's cleared, they're not sexy from a corner, but they've got a 2v1 here. And this is if you just pause that there was for me just before that there, just before it comes in. I think I totally agree. I think at this level of the game, I think 2 or 3 yards over covering, it doesn't allow you that chance to get back. I think I think the Villa players, because they're both strikers, they've gone out there, they've shown the ball back, which you'd be happy with. But then Ings just give himself too much to do. And the fact that Fred's opened out here on his left foot, I think if that's a right footer, I think he'd be able to stop the cross. The fact he's opened up there and Elton, that extra yard he's given himself, because he's gone too close to Watkins to cover him, he's not been able to affect Fred on the cross. But the big thing, and I'll keep talking about, with any sort of pressing, in 11v11 or 9v9 game, you need to be looking as well at what's happening away from the ball. England are attacking, and I think you see there the importance of when Tyrone Mings steps in, it ends in a goal. So England are attacking. So in order to sustain attacks, it's vital now that defenders, if he stays on the halfway line, as we can see him there, I think one of the issues is that's an easy pass to the striker. They can relieve pressure, turn out, and they can kind of kill attacks. Tyrone Mings, if we watch him, you look at his timing. He's got a bit of deception in there that he's kind of not letting the striker know he's there. So he's not letting the striker feel him and be able to pin him. He's coming from the blind side, so his positioning spot on, and he's now aware that he can nick that. It's fantastic timing to step in. Again, like I said with Kira Walsh, when they're intercepting these balls, it's not a case of we're just intercepting and clearing it. We're actually intercepting now to regain possession. He does that. And what this does is it allows you to sustain attacks and keep pressure and wave after wave on teams. This is what England do. So as he steps in and wins that, you look at England now, they can sustain the attack. They've got numbers forward. The opposition are disorganised, and it ends in a goal. So I'm just going to bring that back a little bit, just before he steps in. And for me, this is really important. So as we're looking at Tyrone Mings, he reads it brilliant, steps in. If you look behind the ball, and you notice when we're pressing, I'm often talking sometimes what goes on away from the ball, I think it's Connor Cody. He recognises his central defensive partner is going to step in, which potentially could leave the space. If Tyrone Mings gets that wrong, he gets rolled, but he steps round. I think it's Jordan Henderson. They cover him behind.
Yeah, Warren, I was going to say about what skills and capabilities do defenders need to play with this tactic? What's your thoughts around that?
So again, from a mentality point of view, it's being prepared and being on the front foot to be able to jump. So the reading of the game is vitally important. The speed and the agility to be able to come from where he's come from, to be able to get beyond and nick it in front. So his foot patterns, from acceleration point of view. And again, stand on his feet, because I think certainly in my time playing, back in the day, that might have been a sliding tackle. You know, you got your first one free where you might come in from behind. That's completely gone now. So, you know, there's another skill you need now to be able to stay on your feet and jump in front. So again, they're them sort of capabilities, and I would certainly say it's a mindset first of all. But I think knowing that there's no threat from behind him allows him to be able to go and do that as well. You know, there's no players behind. He's got two players. Once he jumps, the other player drops back in, so that he knows in his mind that I know I can do this because of what. There's no real threat from behind me.
Yeah, I think Rory Prendergast on the chat has made that point. You know, teams, why are they always looking to play to feet? And we've seen this around the academies, and it's one of the things that we're trying to make academies more aware of, that they need to work in bigger spaces to actually allow defenders to learn how to defend those spaces behind them.
That's the back five, Nottingham Forest, a 5-2-3. Again, he's prepared to step in. And once we hold it there, once the defender's coming out of the back five, he's still got four defenders. So he's still got the security behind the ball. So if anything goes wrong, and a lot can go wrong, because if there's big spaces, a midfield runner can get in, a wide striker can roll in that back five. And this was a trend in the Euros. For defenders who were stepping in, it was often coming from teams who played with the back five. And that was a trend of a lot of teams were actually moving to a back three or back five, how you want to call it, when defending. So that allows that, and you get the security when stepping into that area out of a back five. And again, then he's in the midfield, making up the numbers to play. Now here, on the other side, you see Arsenal's Ben White step in. Doesn't do a lot wrong, but as he's just been rolled, the potential problem in a back four is the gaps. There's a big gap between fullback and second central defender, and they don't close that gap. Now that allows wide plays to roll in, and the potential danger is, as you see, as we let it run, that out to in run into the space, and it can be potentially very dangerous.
Whether you play a back five or whether you play a back four, I don't think it makes any difference. What I do think is that the player who engages is obviously the first person who's going to go and get the ball, but it's what happens behind them. If what happens behind them is right, you can play a back four, you can play a back five, and just close the space. So as one centre back goes in, as long as the other two connect and narrow up the space behind him, you're fine. So this is in a five, so that will work. And on the flip side of that, as Ben White goes in, if the right back slides in and the left sided centre back slides in, it's also fine. But on this occasion, they don't narrow up quick enough. So I don't think it makes any difference whether you're playing a four or a five in respect to security behind the ball.
Just picking up on some real sort of detail there. If we look at Steve Cook's challenge, he times his challenge and makes physical contact with the striker who controls it, and obviously they regain it. The difference is Ben White doesn't make contacts, and he arrives just a split second too late and is actually planted as the striker then turns. So there's the contact. He's give it away. Now, as Ben White goes in, he's not close enough to make contact, and he's square, so that gives the striker that moment to wriggle away from him. But the right back doesn't give him the cover. He should have narrowed up, obviously, a lot quicker, and don't allow the winger to make that run from out to in.